With me is Brian Sump from Avalon Motorsports in Denver. Hello, Brian.
Hey, Carm, how are you?
Nice to have you. Now, you know the title of our episode is Who Says You Need an Automotive Background to Run a Successful Shop? And Brian, you joined, after you left pro sports as a pro athlete, Avalon Motorsports, I believe, was the business, right?
Yeah. Now we have two additional locations under the Urban Auto Care brand. We just closed in our third 2 weeks ago. So
you're rocking, man.
Long journey.
You are rocking. Congratulations to you.
Thank you.
And I think you did all this starting about 2007, right?
Right on, early. Yeah, just
Cool.
over 12 years ago.
Good for you. Also with us is Andy Bizub, good friend of the show. Both Brian and Andy are great friends of the show from Midwest Performance Cars in Chicago.
Morning.
Morning, man. And so here's this guy's background. Commodity trader. A whole bunch of years ago, you knew everything about soybeans, right?
Yeah, soybeans and then stock options and then back to soybeans and corn and wheat. But yeah, in the financial world for 25 years.
Oh, my, great. Well, good to have you here.
Thanks.
We're going to talk about this great topic, and it was Andy, I think it was you that brought it to me. You says, hey, Carm, listen, this isn't a hard business to be in.
Oh, no. Very easy.
And, you can basically take the principles of everything else that you've done in life and bring it to this industry. So we're going to start. So Brian,
Okay.
You guys are industry professionals, and everyone in the industry started somewhere. And, it goes a little bit back to the E-Myth thing. How tough was it in the beginning until you put your businessman's hat on?
There's a lot of feeling things out. There's a lot of getting acclimated in something. When you transition careers, it doesn't matter if you're going from a commodities trader to a dentist, or from a radio broadcaster to a pie maker. I mean, there's a learning curve. And I think we talked a little pre-show. Andy was saying the same thing, that you eventually got to assimilate yourself to what you're doing. And so it takes time. When we started, I still tell this story early on. I mean, it was so bad for us that we were writing things on yellow notebook paper and like tearing them off. And I didn't know anything about cars. So would go to the back and I would look at a vehicle with the technician. He would show me what a solenoid was, or a valve cover gasket, and I would see it. And then he would tell me, and I would literally sprint to the phone and regurgitate it as fast as I could to the customer before it escaped my mind. And and one thing I knew is that I could take care of people, and I could build relationships, and I could serve them. And then we have these guys in the back. So it was pretty archaic early on. And but you surround yourself. There have been so many amazing people in this industry that have said, yeah, let me know how I can help, and that have shown us how it traditionally is done. And I think one of the benefits of being an outsider is, we'll talk more about it, I'm sure, is just how we have unique perspectives on what's being done. But at the end of the day, in Gerber, to the point E-Myth, he talks about a pie maker the same as an automotive technician or a doctor that wants to own a practice or build a business. And they can be great in their craft, but does not mean they're going to be necessarily a great businessman. And so business acumen applies to really any kind of an industry or a product or a service. And a lot of the X's and O's are the same there. So there's a learning curve, though.
So Andy, as you approached this business and said, what the hell am I nuts I'm going to start repairing cars? I don't know if that went through you. What excited you about getting into the automotive repair business?
Well, so I was actually a customer of my shop for since 2007, and the financial business was really going through some fundamental changes around 2012, 2013, and I always knew that there'd be a time when I would leave that business because it was going to evolve out away from what I was doing. So I was ready for a new business challenge. And it just so happened that the shop that I had gone to, this shop, was on the brink of going under. It was being mismanaged and had all kinds of problems. Not enough equipment, none of the payroll was being missed. So it was kind of the confluence of two things. One industry was kind of shutting down, and another one was opening up in front of me. But I had always had a really good experience going to the shop. I saw great potential The location was great. The people were great. It just needed some judicious business acumen leading and improving the business. So I put together a deal. I was able to acquire the shop and retain all the employees, including the old owner who I gave a job as the GM. And he worked here for a year and decided to depart after that. And really, after that first year was when we really kind of hit stride and took off and started growing pretty rapidly. And I retained all the entire crew. So I really had the blessing of just a great crew of people that we've been able to retain. But I saw the potential in the business before owning it. And that's what I thought. I thought I needed a good management and some good vision and someone to really push it forward into the future. And that's what I've tried to bring to it.
Thank you so much for that. Hey, before we get too deep inside this great discussion, I want to give a high five out to Jasper for being there for us and supporting this. So it's free every week for the aftermarket. You know, how many times has a customer said that a new vehicle may look and smell nice, but the reality is it comes with seemingly endless monthly payments, higher license fees, and higher insurance premiums, and that's a fact. The better solution, remanufactured components from Jasper, means a new lease on life for your customers' trusted old friend. Visit jasperengines.com. So, what changes have you seen, Brian, since you opened in 2007 to today from an entrepreneurial perspective? You came in with not a lot of knowledge, and now you're out speaking at a ton of places. I mean, you're becoming a critical industry expert, multi-shop owner and all the knowledge you have. Did you ever look back and say in 2007, I was going to be in this place at this time?
No, you don't always see it coming. The analogy I like to use, and I'll use my sports days, my particular story, and this is not to be boastful, it's just for the sake of effect here and making sense of this. When I was in high school, I played 1 year of high school football my senior year. I got a small scholarship at an engineering school to play football. Like I got paid $2,000 a year on a scholarship, pretty small. But my senior class in high school, we had 7 Division I scholarship athletes from my football team. And then I was the Division II guy. So I had all these big blue chippers and I was a small school. Well, all of a sudden, 4 years later, I'm 2-time All-American and half the guys I graduated with weren't even playing in college anymore. And you just you apply certain tenets of growth and development and you find yourself somewhere. And you kind of look around you and you're like, where'd everybody go?
So wait a minute, you're talking about, you had that personal introspective. Did it help build confidence in you?
Well, yeah. I mean, at some point when you look up and you look around, and it's not you're not better than anybody. It's not about elevating yourself at somebody else's expense or where they're not, but you just push hard. Andy can attest. You apply certain tenets to growth and development and you end up somewhere. You progress at a certain rate. And maybe other people don't, but until you put your head up and you look around and you see where everybody's at or how high up the mountain you are, you kind of go, man, how did I get here? Like I knew I was working hard. I knew I was climbing and I was being, whatever, I was creating a path. So you get there and you kind of look around and then, my journey, I think much to yours and Andy's too, much like a lot of people listening, you keep working, you keep growing and you end up somewhere. And then you have some basis for perspective to say, where am I really? And then it was, several years ago, I think Ratchet and Wrench was one of the first experiences in 2012. And they called and said, hey, we want to do our first ever public, cover story for our first publication. We want to do it on you. And I thought, why me? And that's a different story. But at some point in time, it does change and it does look different. But they say everybody can become an expert in a craft or, an area of knowledge after so much time doing it.
I love where he just went with that, Andy, and both of you guys, please chime in on this. He says, everyone can become an expert. So why are so many of the CEOs of our industry struggling?
To me, the business of being in business is about just continual improvement. If you can improve what you're doing, even very incrementally, every day, every week, every month, every year, and just and keep on that trajectory. So when you look back at where you've come from and the advances that your business has made, it's not a linear, it's not a line. There's steps, there's plateaus, there's places where, you pause, the business has a pause, or it catches, you're catching your breath. But then if you got to come in and you have to keep pushing to just do whatever you're doing a little bit better. And if you keep at that, like Brian said, after a while you look back and you're like, hey, I'm 3 years into this, or I'm 5 years into this, and look where we've come. Every once in a while I'll just take a look at some old pictures of this place when I started, just to kind of remind myself that the change has been immense. But you can't say I'm changing everything today, right? You just get on this process of continual improvement. And if you can instill that in your team to where they're always looking to improve what they do, that's more than half the battle.
Brian, did I hear Andy say patience?
Well, I don't know if you heard it directly, but I don't know. I struggle with that. Andy, you probably do too. It's hard when you're driven and you're motivated to be patient and wait for the fruit too. We all struggle with that to some degree. But at some point you just got to let time take its course and keep pushing. Did
you guys enjoy the high water marks that you found? Because I love that. Every once in a while it's spring up here in the Northeast, and we're supposed to have a 70-degree day today, and it's supposed to go back into the 40s as it slowly ramps up and catches up. And I always say, hey, high water mark day today, the 70s are coming. No different with volume, no different with hiring people, no different with your marketing efforts. It's good to celebrate those high water marks, especially as an outsider coming into a new industry.
Well, you want to motivate your people and inspire them, really, to where we're like, hey, that was a great week, that was a great month. Just imagine where we're going to be 6 months from now if we keep pushing. One of the things I always say to everybody on my team is, we want to all be pushing that rock in the same direction, right? So we don't want to have these situations where the shop floor is pushing on one side and the service office is pushing on the other side, and you're canceling each other out. Let's all push in the same direction. And that seems to really, take hold with them.
So the best advice that I would love you guys to give to our industry is this. You came in from the outside world. You weren't techs that grew up in the family business. You didn't go to tech school, become a tech, and then wanted to grow your business. And I would suggest that our business probably has 70% of our owners that came into the world that way. The reason we're doing this is because you came in from the from the outside, and you're extremely successful. So what is it that in the very short amount of time you've been doing this, we've got to be able to drill home into the industry, the people that are listening, the people that are going to listen and going to make this part of their learning curve to become a better CEO. You had to go out and learn some things about the business of our business. Yeah, okay, you need to learn some tech. But have you guys ever picked up a wrench and gone into the bay and fixed anything? I bet you the answer is no. Or if at the worst, I helped out one day.
Yeah, that's exactly the story. One day was the worst day of my life. I tried to do a tie rod, and our staff laughs about it to this day. It's not funny to me, but it's funny.
Those are Brian Sump legacy stories. Those are great.
Yeah.
Even if it didn't happen because they needed you bad, it should have been done on purpose, so that you could have had that story to tell. So the people says, "Hey, Brian, you run the business," and that's what every CEO who came from the Bays needs to be told by his people: go run the business.
Yeah, well, I want to say something real quick. I may have staff listening, but I think it's really important for everybody. Like, I owe a huge debt of gratitude to my team, because a lot of the changes and improvements we made through the years wasn't me as some Wizard of Oz behind a curtain. It was them, and it was them seeing inadequacies in the business and the way and the systems and the processes. So I really need to give a ton of credit to the guys and gals in our organization, because I didn't make every change. It wasn't all my idea. So I learned a lot from them, and I continue to, and they deserve that credit. But back to your question, interesting, Carmen, you talk about being an outsider. Everybody in this industry was an outsider at one point in time. You were a kid, maybe if your parents even owned a shop, it was one day you were in there and you realized you were in there.
Yeah.
But if you were a tech that went to tech school and worked in a dealership or whatever, you were an outsider at one point. And so was I 13 years ago. And so was Andy, I think 6 years ago, right? Or 5 years ago. So we were all on the outside at one point, and now we're on the inside, and we all have different stories, and we all had different beginnings, and we all have different journeys and pathways. And it never ends from the day you start to the day you exit. And maybe it's when they bury we bury you in the ground, or maybe it's when you retire or whatever, but there's a story, and it's continually evolving. Everybody has a different pace. And some of us are moving along at a faster rate because we invite and we solicit feedback from our team and our peers and those around us. And I mean, I wouldn't be afraid to call Andy, or I've got some long-term relationships, some great guys in the industry, Aaron Stokes, Greg Bunch, Mike Brewster, some of these pillars that I grew up with that shed light on me and may reach out to me for a question here and there. So it's continually sharing. And the last thing I'll just say quickly is I heard a great speaker yesterday. He's a part of the Discover Institute or something. My name's Mike, but he was talking about being a rookie and a veteran. And he said rookies are always listening and learning about what they don't know. And veterans are always trying to state what they know. And so he said everybody should have a rookie mentality, and you should be seeking to learn and grow and find out what you don't know. And I really appreciated that.
Boy, that was powerful. And one of the things that I talk about on the show all the time, and I may have coined this word, this phrase 20-some years ago, being a perpetual student. And that was something that I realized probably a little later in my business life, but soon enough that I could make positive change and become a better leader, is that I had to be constantly learning something new each and every day. And I had to read, and I had to go to seminars, and I had a network. And maybe that's one of the most powerful takeaways from this is, here's some pillars of our industry that have been very successful and came, and I don't want to use the word outsider, not a negative thing, but you weren't inside the industry. You were, not insiders, and have learned to grow successful businesses. So why would anyone want to listen or watch this show? Is it because they want to say, well, how did they do it? What was, Brian, it goes back to your great idea of Warren Buffett. Let's get a role model here. If it's not Andy and if it's not Brian, who's the other role model that's been super successful and doesn't know a thing about the businesses he owns?
Yeah, Warren Buffett's an example that a lot of us talk about, and I do want to come back to Andy and how Andy views insider and outsider here in a minute. I definitely want to hear from him, but the Warren Buffett's a great example. In fact, this morning, Carm, as I was thinking about this, I thought about Carl Icahn. Like, I don't know what his industry. I know he owns Federal Mogul or the parts verticals there, but I don't know
Federal Mogul. But yeah, he's in the parts business right now and the service business.
Right, but I don't know if his back. Like, I don't think he grew up in automotive shops, or maybe he did,
no.
But look at these guys. I mean, they Warren Buffett's smallest company, I think, is See's Candies, and I think it's $416 million a year in revenue. That's his smallest business, and he owns these companies. And I don't think he's an expert in any one of them, to my knowledge. He may know more about some than others, but here's the point: is that there are certain pillars of business that apply to anything, and in my eyes, I'll just state them very quickly. There's maybe 5 of them. Do you have a product or service that people want or need? Do you have the ability to tell them about it? Can you keep people when they come into your business? Can you keep them coming back and serving them? Can you manage finances well and procure money and save it and reinvest it? And lastly, can you lead people? You got to have probably people or technology in your business. And I think if you kind of carry those with you, they apply to almost any industry. And once you learn enough about the industry, like we did in the candy business or the cybersecurity space or automotive, it doesn't matter. A lot of the same tenets. And Warren Buffett's a great guy to look at.
And one of the common things about all those guys, Icahn, Buffett, they are all fully cognizant of surrounding themselves with the best people that they can. People that know more than they do. People are smarter than they are. They're not intimidated by dealing with people who can execute better than they ever could. And you empower your team, and you've empowered your entire business. I always try to tell my people, look, we have a problem, we have a bottleneck, we have an issue. You guys figure out your solution to it. I want to hear your solution to it first, because you don't want me to come up with a solution and impose it from on high. You guys know this. You know the systems. You know the day-to-day operations. You know the workflow. Come up with the way that makes it easier for you to better serve the customer. And invariably they do. I mean, whether it's an internal function, whether it's tracking our own internal metrics, or whether it is about dealing with the customer and meeting their expectations. If you give your people the chance and have the confidence in them to come up with their own solutions, their own set of solutions, it just pays off huge, because it makes them go ahead.
Every once in a while I go through these, and all of a sudden, boom, something hits me really hard, almost in every episode. And I'm trying to engage that group in our industry that's our insiders, and they want to learn from you guys. And I don't want to call you outsiders, but non-automotive people that own businesses. And it's almost like you just hit it. If I asked you if you're a better delegator today because of that, you probably say yes, because I had to get help from my people. Interesting, right? Are you a better leader today because I knew that I know nothing about this business and I had to lead this team and I had to learn to be a better leader? And so maybe the answer is because I'm an insider and I know the answers, I want to give so much, and I want to leading my people is that I'm always the answer man, and I always have the answer. And maybe the biggest takeaway from this episode is show restraint, ask your people for the answers, even though you have one. And if by any chance it's going to accomplish the same thing, you wanted a yin and they wanted a yang, but the yang would have produced the same result, then stop being that all-knowing, all-seeing. Stop being the Wizard of Oz. You mentioned it earlier, Brian. I loved it. Stop being the Wizard of Oz in your business while you're letting your people do more things. Go get the network. Go to training. Fly to a conference.
Yeah.
And learn all this stuff that you're having problems with. Is that, did we just break the code here?
Well, if your people come up with their own solutions that are effective, that work, they have to work, right? But if they come up with their own solutions, just think of it. There's no more buy-in. The buy-in's there. They came up with it. So it's not, hey, I think here's how we should address it. Now I have to convince you that this is going to work. I mean, it's a huge win-win, and it's super efficient if you let your people come up with the solutions to bottlenecks in your own business.
You guys had no choices. You had to do this. It's almost like you had to do this, right?
Well, the other thing is when I started out, right, I came in here and I told them, look, I know business. I know finances and everything. I don't know how to fix cars, but I don't need to know how to fix cars. But the other thing I did was the first 6 months, I had a broom in my hand almost every day. I was hauling trash around. I was, reconfiguring the shop. I was physically working in here every day because I had to gain the confidence of these people who knew that I wasn't a tech. I didn't come from a mechanical family. I mean, I'm very mechanically adept, but I don't work on customer cars. So, having that sweat equity in the business goes a long way as well.
Yeah, and that's great, Andy. That's exactly right. And in my eyes, there's a very distinct difference between being just a pure follower, being a leader, and being a dictator. If you're a pure follower, I mean, Andy, our guys and the owners and managers that are listening, like our guys and gals need us to lead them. They need us to come up with solutions and problem solve in a short window of time sometimes. And they need us to lead the charge to inspire and motivate. But if you're a dictator and you're stuck in I always know the answer, your development curve may feel like it's steep, but you're probably not really progressing. And on the flip side of that, if you're always following and you're never leading and you're never innovating and pioneering, and I'll come back to what you see in other people's houses maybe in a minute, Carm, but that analogy. But yeah, you got to be somewhere in the middle of knowing when to step up and inspire and lead and pioneer. And you also have to just make sure that you're mixing in that intermingling and listening to your team. And Andy, I love that. It's like we try to really pass on the hiring process, at least the final yes or no, to our team. And it's because of the reason that if they make the hire, they're more likely to push through adverse times with that team member than if you as the owner, Andy, said, we're going to hire this person and here, like them. And then when crap hits the fan, so to speak, they're not going to have any incentive to push through.
Yeah.
The same thing applies to like our corporate values. You know, we chose 2 and we let the team pick 4 because we wanted them to have buy-in in the value system, and it just goes on and on. So yeah, that reliance upon your team and having them have some skin in the game goes a really long way. It's a great point.
I loved it. If you want to deal with a team fire, make it a team hire.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
And
we
think
hire the team because we function like one. Go ahead.
And think about when you give that power to your team, how much it frees you up to go do really innovative stuff that you can then bring back to the business, right? I mean, we're able to go to the Ratchet and Wrench conference every year because we got a team back there that we know the shop's going to be fine when we get back.
Exactly.
And I wanted to get back, just mention about Brian, the veteran versus rookie, because I got to tell you, when Ratchet and Wrench, when they asked me to speak at last year's conference, it scared the heck out of me, right? Because I'm like, what do I have to say to all of these automotive professionals that's going to be of any value? I mean, it was one of the more intimidating things that I ever had to do. And I spent 25 years yelling and screaming out loud in front of thousands of people every single day. So it's really having
that's
that.
When you were the commodity broker, not now.
Right.
Right.
Now I don't yell and scream at all and stop it ever. I mean,
we'll ask your team about that, Andy. We'll see.
Yeah. They will admit that it's true. I don't yell around here, but yeah, really having that rookie mentality, like, I'm a sponge. I want to soak up everything and sort through what's valuable and what I can use and what might not, but I don't know if I'll ever view myself as an industry veteran,
Yeah.
Every day you're growing into that. Yes, you are. Hey, performance and reliability, that's what Jasper's remanufactured diesel engines provide mile after mile. Jasper's running complete engines are dynamometer tested with horsepower and torque ratings recorded. There's a nationwide warranty included too. Talk about dependable service. Thanks, Jasper, for supporting Town Hall Academy. Go to jasperengines.com. Okay, guys, I love where we've gone with this thing. And I've got a couple of notes here. I want to ask you guys a few questions, but the first one I want to ask you about is the CEO thing. A lot of talk in the industry about becoming the CEO of your business, and that should be the mental trip that says I got to get off of running into working on my business. I'm not sure there's a lot of guys that understand what that really means. What can we do from all your experience from coming into our industry, from not having been an automotive expert? How can we teach? Is there any one great takeaway we can give our industry that's going to move some people into that next level of really what a CEO is and does?
Well, I'll give a little morsel. I think the first year, Andy, I don't know if you were there, the first year at Ratchet and Wrench, I taught this class, how to stop putting out fires and build your business. And that analogy of putting out fires probably makes sense to a lot of us. If you're so busy whacking moles, so to speak, or putting out fires, it's really hard to, rearrange things so that, remove the kindling so that not everything's catching on fire. But one of the things that I think always stuck with me from that I try to encourage any new business owner is to identify the 3 things that you hate most about doing in your business and write them down. Just to say, I hate doing these things. I'm not good at doing these things. And kind of start there and see how and to whom you can delegate those things and pass those things on. And I think that's a good place to start, because where there's vision, there's calling. And if you have vision for something and it makes sense and you get excited about it, then you probably should be doing that. And if you get dragged down and it's like Marcus Buckingham and the strengths thing, I'd focus on your strengths and do more of that. The 80-20 rule, do 80% of, 80% effective doing the things that you're really good at and push off the 20. So that's one thing I would give as a good starting place, is to shovel off the stuff that you hate doing or you're not good at, and find a consultant or a 1099 contractor or a team member to do those things, and, free yourself up a little bit.
Yeah, that's great. So that's a great, and I've never read that 80-20 rule. I still have to read that book, right? One of the things that I would encourage the veteran shop owner to do is to take an honest look at of living in his customer's shoes. So drive up to your business, get the sense of what does your customer see when they pull up? What is their experience dropping off the car? What is their experience relating issues to your service advisor? All steps of that process. And it doesn't have to be really long and drawn out. It doesn't have to be 50 points, but just get a sense of what is the real customer experience when they arrive, drop off, pick up from your business, right? Because I think we look a lot at what's inside our business, at the people in the back in the shop, the people in the service office, but really put yourself in that customer shoes and understand their pain points and alleviate their points of pain and the friction involved in whatever you're doing. You could apply this to any business, but we're talking about automotive repair. What's the friction in getting their car fixed? And as we've removed those pain points and gotten rid of that friction, that's where we've really grown and seen this great satisfaction level from our customers, where we have customers who are like, I've never had an experience like this. I've never, no matter what dealer I went to or what shop, so that's what I would encourage the day-to-day veteran who grew up in his shop. Maybe he was the technician and now he's the owner.
Stop, get outside of it, look in.
Yeah.
Brian, you just said, what do you hate about, your job? And one of the things that I thought about was, okay, if you put the hate list and the love list together and you'd say, I hate marketing. Let me suggest this to you, and I'd love to have your take on this. Okay, I can delegate it, contract it, 1099 it, do anything I want, but I want it off my plate. But I shouldn't not know what marketing is, so that whoever is working for me is going to do the things that matter. Because it's like a loose can. I don't want to think about marketing, and all of a sudden your business is heading in the wrong direction because you haven't pulled the right levers. And do you agree that I think you may not need to know every fine detail, but you need to understand marketing?
Yeah, marketing just one of the areas, and that's a great example. So if you build an org chart as high as an org chart can go, you end up somewhere with president, CEO, or maybe you're chairman of the board or somewhere in that capacity. But big organizations, look at their org charts. Okay, military. You've got generals and you've got, sorry, forgive me, I'm not great at the military hierarchy, but you've probably got colonels and lieutenants and and same thing happens in a CEO in a big company. You've got president and vice presidents or directors who you meet and you audit at a very high level. So you get reports that come up the ladder. And so a CEO, especially like if you're a multiple shop operator, let's take that. You have to have maybe a district manager, a director of ops. You've got to have store level managers and foremen and advisors. And what you really want to be able to do is be able to audit snapshots of things and quantify KPIs to be able to say, this is functioning right, or this doesn't really seem right. And so in marketing, there's a simple thing. I mean, I think you can just take basic ROI, and I encourage you to be very careful doing this like 30 days out, maybe do it like 6 months out or a year out, but you got to just have basic understanding of like, what kind of customers am I trying to get, and am I getting them, and what am I spending, and is it generating profit for me? And there's some basic things, but it's a great example. Yeah, you want to be able to quantify and get reports from your marketing agency that help you see that it's working or not.
And again, where I was leaning with that also, and I appreciate it, I think you really helped clarify it for me. But if I didn't love marketing and I hated it and I was going to subcontract it, and I was heading to a place like Vision and there were some marketing classes, put your butt in that seat and absorb as much as you possibly can, so that when you go out and audit, if you will, your marketing efforts and or the person or agency who's doing it, you just stepped up the smart meter a whole bunch because you're getting yourself trained. You can't, I guess my point is that, and I'm asking both of you, you can't abdicate every area of your business. You've got to know something about, a little bit about everything. You don't know what you don't know. You have to bring that in.
Yeah. Yeah. There's varying philosophies on this, Carm. And, I don't know what camp Andy falls into, but it's kind of like looking at a report card in school. If you've got straight A's, but you've got an F in math, what do? Do you try to get your F to a D or a C and then take away from what you're really good at? Or do you just keep crushing it with A's and just say, I'm not good at math. And I think Marcus Buckingham, again, in this whole strengths concept, there's this torment between, should I just keep doing the things I'm good at and not worry about, like if I'm the best at one thing, I can build a business on that. So there's varying camps, but my opinion is that you should polish up where you're weak and at least learn enough to be mindful of what you don't know, and just keep excelling at your strengths. But Andy, I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
No, I agree with that. I also really encourage owners to invest in their people and invest in the success of their people's having a career, right? I always tell our people, I'm like, I don't want you to think of this as a job. This should be a career that you can build a life on. So I will send you to whatever training is needed to fill in, whatever weaknesses you have, or to perform whatever functions we need you to perform. So I personally, I love marketing, right? That's one of the things I really like to do. But for some other functions that I might not want to do, I'm going to understand them enough so that when I talk to the person in my organization who is in charge of that, I can relate to what they're saying. Right. But I don't need to know every detail about how they get it done.
That's the point. That's the point I was trying to make on the hate side of the list. You can't totally abdicate it. If not, I think you're not doing your job as a CEO. You've got to know something about it, which
you're right.
Moves yourself into that whole being a perpetual student and always learning and finding the time in your workload to do that. Let me tie into strengths, Marcus Buckingham, with you, Andy. I did a Strengths Finder 2.0 6 years ago, and before I was a podcaster, and I looked at the results and I said, that's not me.
Being a podcaster is not you?
No. This is way before I was a podcaster.
Okay.
And I looked at the results, and I got the top 5 strengths in Strengths Finder 2.0. By the way, everyone, that book is on my books page on the website. You got to get the book. You got to read the first 34 pages. Then you take the test, and then you go from there. And you'll find out what your gifts are, if you will, under this particular test. And I've taken a lot of crazy tests in my life, from the personality, the disc side and stuff. And I looked at that and I said, well, that's not me. And I said, I can't believe it. And I was still working for corporate America back then. And I said, that's not me. And so when I left corporate America and I decided to become a podcaster, I went back. I said, I looked at that test, and I looked at that test. Those 5 top strengths is why I'm where I am and what I'm doing today.
Sure.
Yeah,
you found your level.
I found
water seeks its own level. Right?
I found it. Yeah. So all I'm telling you, I hear a guy who said no, and then I said, oh yes. And so and that's where you end up having to play. And I think, Brian, you brought up a great thing. Anyone who's leading their business today is got to know that about themselves.
Well, it does, and I don't know. I just think it enhances. It's like you're aware of what you weren't aware of. And unlocking potential sometimes is understanding giftings and callings. And maybe I should be doing more of my strengths. And maybe this allows me to get out of my comfort zone, or maybe it's not best for me in my comfort zone. So I'm going to get out of that. I'm going to start pushing the envelope. And, you want to be fulfilled in what you do and not dragged down by it. And I don't know, Andy, I have the sense that you enjoy what you do. I sure do. And it's taken me falling on my face and some other different things in life to really realize, gosh, you're good at this, and there's no replacement for doing what you're best at. And scratching an itch is fine, but at some point in time, being in your calling and have the wind behind you instead of in your face your whole life, it's a pretty liberating thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's what's also neat is when the people on your team, they know that you're doing something that you like to be doing. And like personally myself, if I come back from the SEMA show or something like that, they're like, we're glad you went out there, right? We don't need you here answering the phone. You go do what you do because you're really good at doing it, and you're raising the profile of the shop, and you're talking about us and everything. So they've seen where the business can go when we're all doing the roles that we should be doing. Which, when you brought up that taking that test, Carm, everybody here has done the Wonderlic test, including all the techs. And I know that in that everybody who's hired already in the job. But I just told everyone to take the test just, for a kick. So you could just kind of see it. And sure enough, everybody's personality was absolutely represented in that test. I mean, it almost came out just perfect on every single person.
I have Strengths Finders, the mobile app on my phone.
Well, Carm, the thousands of us are indebted to him for helping you realize these things because of this podcast or this, these webinars and this radio streaming. Really service to our industry. So we really appreciate you a lot.
I thank you so much. And by the way, let me, Apex is one of my sponsors this year. And so whenever I hear someone say, I go to SEMA, why do I always say, if you're not spending a day or two in the Sands Convention Center going to Apex because you make your living repairing automotive, SEMA is okay. It's great. There's a lot of fun stuff there. But if you want the business of the aftermarket, you got to go to Apex.
Well, I always stay at the Venetian because it's attached there, so I can walk right down to Apex.
Yeah, I've been on my soapbox about that. And anyway, you'll probably even hear some commercials, when I come up on a soapbox and says, if you're going to SEMA, go to Apex if you make your living here.
No, and Apex is a fantastic show, and I would encourage every auto shop owner listening to this to try to get out to Apex. You don't need to go to SEMA. SEMA's fun, but Apex is where the rubber really meets the road.
Maybe I'll call Apex and you could be our new spokesman.
No, it's a great show. Yeah.
Thank you. Hey, guys, I want to come back, and if there's anything on your talking points we didn't cover, kind of check them out. I'm going to give one final high five to Jasper, and then we'll come back and we'll button this thing up. Hey, as the average age of vehicles keeps rising, your customer's old engine or transmission is going to wear out. 11 and a half, 12 years old car now. And when that day comes, Jasper will be the name to remember. Jasper's remanufactured products cost considerably less than a new vehicle, so it just makes sense to choose Jasper for your customers' drive, train problems. Okay, wow, I love some of the places we went here today. This was fun. I know where we started and where we ended. I think it kind of almost took an interesting spin, but the objective that I had, guys, was to get our hardworking, wrench-turning CEOs to look at you guys and say, wow, they could do it. They didn't know wrenching. They still don't, and they're running really successful businesses. And maybe I can find some motivation in this episode. So let me ask you guys, Andy, I'll let you. Any final things?
Yeah, sure. Don't be afraid of change. Change it's a part of life, and it's a part of every successful business. And in the short 5 years that I've been in this industry, the change that's been affected has been massive, and the pace of change increases, and don't be scared of it. I'll for a boots on the ground example, I'll just go to digital video inspections. I mean, 5 years ago, who even knew about what those are? And just on Monday, my people in the service office were saying just how much they love the DVI platform that we use, and how much they love it and how much our customers love it, and the kind of how much more effective they are and efficient. So, I mean, that's just one little thing in just a river of change that we've seen. And don't be afraid, because it's actually going to make your business grow faster and be more efficient, and you'll probably enjoy it more when it's doing both of those things.
Yeah.
I have 30 questions that I could ask all about what you just said, but I won't, because we'll go on to
next episode
afternoon if we had. No, but I appreciate that so much. Very, very enlightening, very inspiring. Thank you very much. Brian, I'll let you summarize it, man.
So here's the best way that I can kind of concisely articulate what I think being an outsider coming in looks like. Okay, in every one of our homes, our literal houses, we have cobwebs in corners that we don't notice. And I don't care if you're that 1 out of 100 super OCD person listening, you still have some dirt somewhere or a weird scratch in the wall that you never see. But when somebody comes over to your house, or better yet, when you go to somebody else's house, within 30 seconds, you can notice the cobwebs on their walls and in their corners of their houses and the imperfection. I'm not getting into vanity here. I'm just saying, like, you can perceive things when you go to other people's houses. And so the value of letting people into your organization to assess and to help you identify where you're weak, and then going into other people's shops and businesses and building relationships, because you will assess things that you won't assess in your own business. And I think Andy and I, and Kareem, if he was here, and anybody else that's been on, my good friend Doug Grills in Maryland, right? Sort of an outsider kind of a thing. But there's people, you can see things that insiders cannot see when you come from the outside. And you can learn the basics of how things work, which a lot of these technicians or shop owners already know. But if you can identify the things that you never saw and look at them in a new way and start to problem solve on the consumer. Andy had a great point, right? Think of a consumer coming into your store. Culture is, what does it look like? What does it feel like? How does your team think? And how do you make customers feel? And what does it smell like? And all of that kind of stuff. And it's hard to think that way when you're stuck in the grind, or you just always know what you know. And so that being comfortable with change, Andy, is great. And almost the accountability for change is inviting people into your world and inviting yourself into others so that you can see the cobwebs in your own corners and expand how your shop grows and progresses.
I love it. Great. And thanks for bringing that up, Andy, about, taking a look at your business from the customer's perspective. I think one of the things that people have to do is they need to go to Lowe's or Home Depot. They need to buy a gallon of paint. They need to take that paint. They need to walk out to the curb of their business holding that gallon of paint in their hand, because, we're really just trying to create something here. We're trying to, if muscles have memories and, brain, what am I going to do with this gallon of paint? And you can start, and then you walk in the business as you're holding this gallon of paint. You walk into the restroom, you start walking around, and you're saying, I have a home for this. I found a home for this. And that's the start of looking at it from the customer's perspective. And that advice was just free today for everyone.
That's right.
Thanks to Brian Sump from Avalon Motorsports in Denver, formerly pro athlete, been in business since 2007. Andy Bizib, Midwest Performance Cars in Chicago, former commodity trader. And both of you are specialists. What are you doing with Urban? Is it a specialist, Brian?
No, it's general repair.
General repair?
Neighborhood service, yeah.
Cool. Okay.
Exactly.
And Andy, you guys are working on Mercedes, BMW, Audi?
We're mostly in our downtown location. We're mostly Porsche, and then the rest is all the rest of the Germans. And I opened a second one. We just had our 1-year anniversary up in Northbrook, a north suburb, which is also mostly European, but general repair as well.
Well, congrats to your success, and thanks for being here for the Town Hall Academy this week. Bye, guys.